The Boy Knight and the Sword of Dawn. The rain tapped softly against the windows of the stone castle as 13-year-old Aldrich tightened the straps on his worn leather armor. The armor had belonged to his father once, a knight who had vanished years ago during a battle beyond the northern mountains. The chest plate was too large for Aldrich, and the boots squeaked when he walked, but none of that mattered tonight. Tonight, he was leaving home. Outside the castle walls, the kingdom of Eldoria was falling apart. Villages burned in the west. Strange creatures prowled the forests at night. And deep beneath the king's castle, locked inside the ancient royal library, there was a prophecy. A child of courage shall walk where kings have failed. Beyond shadow and storm, the sword of dawn awaits. Most believed the legendary sword was only a myth. Some said it was forged by dragons. Others claimed it had been blessed by the sun itself. But the stories all agreed on one thing. Whoever wielded the Sword of Dawn could unite the kingdom. And Aldrich intended to find it. He slipped through the sleeping castle quietly, carrying a small satchel filled with bread, a water skin, and a rusty dagger. Just as he reached the stable, a voice startled him. "You're truly going, then?" Aldrich turned sharply. Standing in the doorway was Mira, the blacksmith's daughter. She crossed her arms and stared at him with annoyance. "You didn't think I'd let you sneak away alone, did you?" Aldrich sighed. "Mira, this journey is dangerous." "So is staying here," she replied. She tossed him a short sword wrapped in cloth. "I made it myself." Aldrich carefully unwrapped it. The blade gleamed silver in the moonlight. "It's not magical," Mira said, "but it's sharper than that butter knife you carry." For the first time that night, Aldrich smiled. Moments later, the two rode out through the castle gates on horseback, disappearing into the dark forests beyond Eldoria. For 3 days they traveled through muddy roads and abandoned villages. Travelers spoke of terrifying things in whispers. Giant wolves in the woods, shadows moving in old ruins, and a mysterious knight dressed entirely in black armor. On the 4th night, Aldrich and Mira camped near a ruined tower. A cold wind howled through the trees. "You really think the sword exists?" Mira asked quietly. Aldrich stared into the fire. "My father believed it did. And if you find it, then maybe I can save the kingdom." Mira poked the fire with a stick. "You're 13. Aldrich grinned faintly. "I know." Suddenly, the horses screamed. The trees exploded with movement. 3 enormous wolves burst from the darkness, their eyes glowing blue. "Run!" Mira shouted. But Aldrich stepped forward, gripping his sword with trembling hands. The first wolf lunged. Aldrich barely blocked the attack. The force knocked him backward into the dirt. Another wolf circled behind him while Mira grabbed a burning branch from the fire. She swung it wildly, driving one creature back. Aldrich, the largest wolf, leaped toward him, jaws wide open. Without thinking, Aldrich raised his sword. A burst of golden light flashed from the blade. The wolf flew backward, crashing into the trees with a yelp. Everything became silent. The wolves retreated into the forest, disappearing like smoke. Mira stared at the glowing sword in shock. "That," she whispered, "was not normal." Aldrich looked down at the blade. The silver metal shimmered faintly before fading. Neither of them slept much that night. Days later, they reached the mountains of Vale. According to the prophecy, the Sword of Dawn rested somewhere beyond the mountains inside the Temple of the Sun, a place hidden for centuries. The climb was brutal. Snow whipped against their faces as they climbed narrow paths beside deadly cliffs. More than once, Mira nearly slipped into the darkness below. Then came the avalanche. A deep rumble echoed across the mountains. "Aldrich," Mira whispered fearfully. The entire mountainside collapsed. "Run!" Snow thundered toward them like a giant white wave. Aldrich grabbed Myra's hand and dove behind a large rock just as the avalanche roared past. Ice and snow buried them instantly. Everything went dark. Aldrich awoke coughing. His arm hurt badly, and freezing snow surrounded him. "Mira," he called weakly. No answer. Panic filled his chest. He dug desperately through the snow until finally he found her hand. Together they crawled free into the cold mountain air. Mira shivered violently. "I hate mountains." Aldrich laughed weakly. Then he noticed something strange. A golden light glowed nearby beneath the snow. They uncovered a stone staircase leading downward into the mountain itself. At the bottom stood massive golden doors marked with the image of a rising sun. "The Temple of the Sun," Aldrich whispered. They had found it. Inside, ancient torches suddenly burst into flame as they entered. Giant statues lined the halls, warriors holding swords toward the ceiling. At the center of the temple stood a pedestal, and embedded within it was the Sword of Dawn. The blade was magnificent. Pure gold light flowed across the metal like sunlight on water. Its hilt was wrapped in white leather, and a crystal glowed in the center. Aldrich stepped closer carefully. "You found it," Mira breathed. But before Aldrich could touch the sword, a voice echoed through the temple. "You are not worthy." A dark figure emerged from the shadows. A knight in black armor. The same one travelers had spoken of. His armor looked burned and cracked, and his red cloak dragged across the floor like spilled blood. "I have searched for the sword for 20 years, the knight growled. "I will not lose it to a child." The knight drew a massive black blade. Aldrich swallowed hard. "You should leave," the Dark Knight warned. Instead, Aldrich raised his sword. The knight charged. Steel clashed violently. Aldrich stumbled backward under the knight's strength. Every strike shook his arms painfully. Mira grabbed a fallen spear and joined the fight, distracting the knight long enough for Aldrich to recover. But the Black Knight was too powerful. He knocked Mira aside and sent Aldrich crashing against a pillar. "You cannot win," the knight said coldly. Aldrich's sword slipped from his fingers. The Black Knight lifted his blade for the final strike. Then Aldrich remembered something his father once told him. A knight's greatest strength is not power, but courage. Slowly, Aldrich stood. He walked past the knight, straight toward the Sword of Dawn. The knight roared and swung his weapon. But Aldrich grasped the sword first. The temple exploded with light. Golden energy burst outward like a sunrise. The Black Knight was thrown backward across the chamber. Aldrich lifted the Sword of Dawn high into the air. The blade blazed brighter and brighter until the darkness around them vanished completely. For the first time, the Black Knight removed his helmet. Aldrich froze. The man beneath the armor looked tired and broken. And familiar. "Father," Aldrich whispered. The man lowered his eyes sadly. Years ago, Aldrich's father had searched for the sword too. But he had failed its test and become consumed by darkness, trapped as the temple's guardian. "I wanted to protect the kingdom," his father said quietly. "But fear changed me." Aldrich stepped forward slowly. "You're not lost," he said. The sword glowed warmly. The darkness covering his father's armor began to crack and crumble away like ash. Finally, the black armor shattered completely. Aldrich's father fell to his knees, free at last. Mira stared in disbelief. No one is going to believe this story. Weeks later, Aldrich returned to Eldoria carrying the Sword of Dawn. The people gathered in the streets as the young knight rode through the kingdom beside Mira and his father. For the first time in many years, hope returned to the land. And though Aldrich was only 13 years old, the kingdom would forever remember the brave boy knight who crossed mountains, faced darkness, and found the legendary Sword of Dawn. But deep beneath the mountains, in the shadows of the ruined temple, a pair of glowing eyes opened, and a voice whispered, "The true war is only beginning."